I wanted to talk to you on the topic, discipline is key. Discipline is key. So, you've heard me say this if you've been around me very much. Discipline is the great equalizer. So, frankly, the more disciplined you are, the better you're going to do at everything. And you can't control how much natural ability you have, but you can control what you do with it. So, one thing that I think there's a lack of, but at least it's something that is said often, and is encouraged, is to work hard. So you have to be a hard worker. You have to be willing to do things when you don't feel like doing it, when you don't want to do it. I like gym analogies, weightlifting analogies. Often I go to the gym and someone asks me, what are you training today? Or how are you feeling? So, well, I'm not feeling that great. It says, I don't really want to do this. Well, good thing is, you don't have to want to do it. You just have to do it. Wanting to do something, oftentimes, when you don't want to do it, I think sometimes people believe that there's some kind of mystical, or other people have it different, other people want to do it all the time. No, other people don't want to do it, but they do it anyway, because you don't have to want to do it, you just have to do it, right? If you think about that, that can actually be quite a liberating sort of idea, because it means that nothing's wrong with you for not wanting to do what it is that you need to do. Nothing's wrong with you. It's called the human condition. Gravity pulls you down. Everybody is susceptible to that. So you're not alone in that. But it might take something uncommon. It might take something uncommon for you to do what you need to do anyway. You might have to dig down a little deeper. That's where you're really going to be tested. That's where you're going to be tested in life, period. So you have to work hard. You have to be willing to do it, even when you don't want to do it. You have to work smart. Okay? So you could be working hard, but you could be working in the wrong direction. And part of why you go to school, to study with the kind of faculty that we have here, is because they're going to tell you the right things to be working on. They're going to show you how to work smart. Okay? So working smart is also very, very important. But if you're not even willing to work, then being told all the right things and here's a way to cut off probably a year working in the wrong direction. Here's a principle that'll help you. If you're not willing to put the work in, it doesn't matter what the information is, right? So you have to be willing to work hard, but you also want to work smart. And you need to be able to identify and notice the difference between focus and tunnel vision. So, I like gear a lot. gear like instruments, electronic toys, effects pedals, guitars, keyboards, it's like toys, right? I mean, what is there? I mean, show me all these people that don't like gear. Everybody likes gear, right? Especially new gear. Now, when I get a piece of new gear, I don't even have to try. And I can spend hours and hours just focused on that piece of gear. Well, not actually focused. It's like tunnel vision. It's like I can't control it. Like all I want to do is, right? So the problem with that is that when the gear is not new anymore, then I also don't have that uncontrollable urge to deal with it, right? At that point, I would actually need focus, right? So focus is actually a discipline thing, right? Whereas tunnel vision is not disciplined at all. Okay? So focus is the ability to remove distractions. Okay, so the distractions are there. There's other opportunities to do other things all the time, but you still choose, to do a particular thing. That's focus. All right. Now, a lot's been said about people. You hear often people saying, "Oh yeah, I love to practice. That's my favorite time of the day is to go to the practice room." And it may be true for some people. Okay, and I'm not suggesting that nobody likes to play their instrument, but we need to separate out sort of farting around and practicing, right? I mean, I love to fart around. That's like my favorite thing to do. Get in here, waste a bunch of time, just play some stuff I can already play. Not really intense about it, just letting stuff happen. I have my horn on me all day, watching football. I love to fart around. But practicing is a whole other matter. That's when you're sitting in there and you're really dialed in, focus. And because what produces results in the practice room is not spending time. It's not the time, it's the energy. We talk a lot about time. Time waits for no man, as the saying goes. We talk a lot about time. You only have a certain amount of time. I say that all the time. But really what you should be focusing on is your energy. What are you putting energy towards? Because I venture to say, you all have more time than I have. As far as chunks of time where you can sit there and just practice. You have more time than I have to do that. But are you actually using that time? Are you actually using that time? Are you actually intense? Are you using energy in that time? You only have a certain amount of energy. So if you're sort of spinning your wheels in other directions, or you're spending time doing things that are taking energy, then you have to figure out how to dial that stuff out and make better choices. Okay? Energy. We've heard this thing about 10,000 hours. Does anybody know where that comes from? Go ahead. Malcolm Gladwell? That's right. Outliers. It's called Outliers. If you haven't read that book, it's a really good book. You should read it. A lot of folks in the arts community embraced that book. But it wasn't actually in specific particularly for artists. Matter of fact, the research began when him and his wife, Malcolm and his wife, who are hockey fans, discovered certain, what they thought were anomalies in Canadian hockey. And they discovered that basically, with the way that it was set up, that if you were born earlier in a particular year, it could give you more of an advantage because it was more hockey training. So if kids started training for hockey at 5 or 6, then if you turned 5 or 6 a little earlier in the year, then you could get in those. And then there was a disproportionate number of them that had been playing for longer, for training for longer, by months, that were in the NHL. That's actually where the research came from. That's where it started, you know. And so the principle holds true for everything. So in other words, it's not just a music thing. The more time that you spend, and I'm going to suggest that it's intense, focused time, not just hanging around when stuff is going on, but actually being engaged. The faster you can get to that 10,000 hours, the more likely you'll be able to make a meaningful contribution to your chosen discipline. Now, one thing that he talks about in that book also is he talks about the fact that natural ability is a requirement, a certain amount of natural ability. But we all know sort of freaky, naturally talented folks. It doesn't take all that. I'm not invalidating that. It's beautiful to see. But it doesn't take that. It takes, what you should be asking is, how much natural ability is necessary? You know, I mean, they say that, you know, Mozart's sister was actually more talented than him. Anyway, so, you know, all about this working hard and working smart and learning the difference between focus and tunnel vision and learning how to weed out distractions so that you can focus intense energy in the practice room. But one of the things that tends to get in the way is poor organizational skills. Okay? Now, I don't know what it is. I have an idea of what it is. But creative types often have a lot of challenges with organization. You know, with stuff like, okay, let me set my schedule up. Let me be real specific about what it is that I'm going to do. Let me set some goals. Let me try to work towards those goals. When I see that the way that I'm working through things is not effective, let me make adjustments. You know, let me utilize technology. You know, I mean, we have technologies all around us. We can either sort of fight against it, or we can say, okay, this is what it is. Let me see if there's a way I can utilize it to, you know, to speed up my progress. Right? So I don't know if any of you have seen, probably a lot of you have seen my calendar or my schedule. And it's color-coded, and it is very congested. There's a lot of stuff going on my schedule. And I wouldn't be able to do probably a third of the stuff that I do if I didn't have that set up that way. Okay. Now, sometimes you can look at something that's has a lot of stuff, a lot of activity, and can start making you sort of stressed. It's like, oh my goodness. But I actually it actually has the opposite effect. Because if I didn't have that stuff written down, I'd have to be retaining it. I'd have to be thinking about it and remembering stuff. And there's only so much bandwidth that you have. And I probably sleep with, it would do havoc on everything. On sleeping, on being present. You're in a lesson with your professor, and you're space cadet thinking about 1,000 other things at a time because you didn't write any of the stuff down, and so you're trying to remember it. And so you can't get out of every situation what you need to get out of it, right? So being organized is important. I think logging your practice is particularly important. And although I've had my students logging their practice for some years now, I've refocused this school year. And a question that I ask every student when they come in my office is, how was your practice week? That's the first question. The second question is, did you log your practice? Okay, show me. Okay, now, the reason for that is not because I want to be the practice room police. I don't have video cameras in the practice rooms. It's not that. It's not that I want to be in anybody's business. But it's because if I can see what it is that you're actually doing, then I can actually help you. Because then we can kind of cut past the BS, right? Because all of us, you want people to think a certain thing of you. And so it's not that we necessarily are lying. It's that we're sometimes not as transparent about certain things, and or we don't even know how to be transparent. It's said that to know thyself might be the hardest thing to do, is to know yourself. Now I know that seems strange. Well, I am me, I know me, I've been with me the whole time. But because of the subjectivity of that, you can't actually know you. Not objectively. It takes other people. It takes other people to tell you who you really are. That's one of the reasons we need each other. You can know some things about yourself. You can have an idea of what makes you happy. But it's really hard to know. Okay, so one of the things that makes marriage particularly challenging is that I can tell my wife I walked in a straight line from here to there, and she will tell me, actually, you walked like this. Yeah, people that are married don't know what I'm talking about. And she's probably right, because I can't see myself walk, whereas she can. You understand? You can't stand outside of yourself and see yourself. It takes someone else to do that. So, accountability. Accountability. Part of lessons, part of studying, part of planning ensembles, part of it is about accountability. Right? You have the instructor's there to give you information, to help you, but they're also there to hold your feet to the fire, to make you do what you need to do, right? At least they can call you out when you're not doing what you need to do, right? So that's part of accountability. And that accountability doesn't need to just come from your teachers. It can come from your classmates. It can come with other folks that are sitting around. It's like, man, I know you think you did this, but I know you thought you were playing the changes on that, but let me talk to you. Every time you get to the fourth bar, you are avoiding G sharp. And that's the third of it. You know? So you can do it for each other. It doesn't have to just be your teacher. That's not my favorite part of my job. Is to provide accountability. That doesn't seem very interesting or fun. But that is part of it. You know? But you have to be willing to submit to that fully, or else you're not going to actually get what you need to get. Right? So you have to sort of, whatever aspects of your ego that get in the way of that, you have to check that stuff at the door. Okay? Accountability. You know, all of this stuff is made much more difficult if you're not fit. Okay, now what do I mean by that? There's different kinds of fitness, right? Not just physical fitness. There's other kinds of fitness too. So let's talk about some of those. You know, one thing that happens to me, and this is because, especially in situations where I'm, susceptible to tunnel vision. I got a new piece of gear. All I can do is just think about that piece of gear. And I'm not even hungry. So I can go all day. I didn't eat anything. Right? Now, I can't do that for too particularly long. Can't do that for like days at a time. But I can easily go a whole day and not even feel hungry. All right? Now, let me tell you something. If you identify with that, that's tunnel vision. That's not focus. Okay? That's not focus. That's tunnel vision. You're not in control of it. This is very easy for me to go the whole day without eating. But that's not good for you. It's not good. You got to feed your body if you want to do what we're trying to do. You have to. I think it's important to exercise. Do some kind of exercise. If it's walking, jogging, weight training, something. Being active, riding a bike, something. Get your blood moving. Get your heart rate. Something, something on a regular basis. Get used to moving around. A great benefit of technology is what it allows us to be able to do. All the space age crazy stuff technology is doing. Have you seen the way some of these smartphones look now? It's incredible. But on the other side of that, it also tends to promote sitting down when, if that technology maybe didn't exist, maybe we would be doing something active. And that's going to have long-term consequences. The term musician's physique, that's not particularly positive. It probably doesn't conjure anything positive in your mind. And there's a reason for that. It's because there's a long tradition of musicians, great musicians, that were not in particularly good shape. And they died early because of it. If you want to do it for a long time, you got to take care of yourself. And you got to sleep. Okay, look. I'm I'm going to tell you something. You can't do anything if you don't sleep. All right? It's just, look, I'm telling you this from experience. Not sleeping equals nothing. If you can't sleep, you got nothing. And so you have to guard your sleep. You got, and you, there's something called sleeping hygiene. Anybody understand? So, sleeping hygiene, and you know, this is something new to me because, you know, I'm involved with a lot of things and I'm intensely focused on a lot of things. Not at the same time. You can't focus on more than one thing at the same time. But over the course of the day, I'm using a lot of energy focusing on different things. And I train hard, and I play hard, you know, and so for years and years and years, I never ever even had to think about sleeping hygiene, right? So I just basically worked until I couldn't do anything anymore, and then passed out, didn't even remember laying down, and then get up the next morning and do it again. That was my pattern. But that pattern caught up to me. That pattern caught up to me. And now I have a very specific list of things that I do so I can get to the point where I can go to sleep. And you might not think that those things are always necessary, but they're necessary in establishing the pattern so that if you have an evening when you're particularly anxious about something, stressed about something, the pattern will help you to go to sleep. So sleeping hygiene. And sleeping hygiene, it could just be something like a meditation, saying a prayer, wherever you go to sleep, don't mess around in that area. You know, if one of the mistakes people make is they'll be doing their taxes on the bed. You know, they'll be doing all kinds of stuff on, you know, in their bed. So then your mind doesn't know the difference between work and sleep. And we're very spatial, like we're looking around and stuff like. You know, don't drink caffeine, you know, past 4 p.m. Anything with caffeine in it past 4 p.m. You know, there's a few things like that. You can get online and you can look into that. But it's important to try to set up some kind of consistent pattern in a consistent location that you only sleep in. If possible. I know some of the dorms are set up in different ways. But if you can do that will help you. So part of fitness is mental health, right? And stress is a regular part of life and is normal to have stress. But it's not normal to have stress all the time with no resolution. Right? So for instance, I'll describe something that is normal. You have a jury coming up. You are anxious about it, you're stressed about it, you're practicing, you're doing what you need to do. You get all the way up to the jury, you're still pretty stressed, you're on high alert. You finish the jury, you're not stressed anymore. The jury went well. Okay, great. You relax, maybe you celebrate. You know, I think that in general, people don't celebrate enough when they achieve things. I know I don't. I'm so busy with stuff sometimes that I don't have time to celebrate. I think that's a mistake. You have to celebrate. When stuff goes well, you got to celebrate because you're reminding yourself and you're teaching your subconscious even that is in charge of sending you these stress signals. You're reminding yourself why it is that you deal with the stress. So then it's okay, right? And what's not normal is, okay, I'm stressed, you know, I got to do this jury, I got to do this other thing, and then the jury's over and you're still at full stress, and it doesn't go away. That's not normal. And if you feel that way, if you feel stressed out the wazoo all the time, you really should go and talk to a counselor. You should seek medical advice. Okay? Because it's just not normal. And it makes it like incredibly difficult to like enjoy anything. You know? You can't even be present in conversations because you're stressed. And so this thing is following you around. You have to learn how to let that go. Stress is normal, temporarily. Temporarily, but not all the time. So you gotta work on that. I know that's something I have to work on. And stress and anxiety and insomnia go hand in hand. They promote each other. They keep each other going. You know? And if you can't sleep and you're also stressed, it's going to make the stress worse. Okay? So you have to work that out. So, you know, we spend a lot of time in the practice room, and we're around music a lot, and we're in rehearsals, and we're around people, but often we feel isolated, right? I know I feel isolated at times, you know? It's like, this is a different meaning of the lyric, of the name of the song, but, you know, it's like alone together, right? So you're together, you're with people, but you still feel alone. You still feel isolated, you know. Now, part of that, I think, is promoted by social media and all the other things that we do, which teach us to not be present when other people are around. So you have to work on that, you know. But we're in a community. You have other people here, and you have to, if you feel isolated, you've got to reach out and say, hey, you know, now think of something to do, you know. So, you know, I'm practicing this particular tune. Hey, you guys you want to get together and practice? Or you want to get together to do this? Or hey, let's go grab some pizza. You know, there's an unreleased Coltrane, you know, CD, and it finally came out. I want to check it out. Anybody want to come? You know, find ways to, you know, get together. Go to jam sessions, right? You don't have to play at the jam session. I mean, you know, eventually you're trying to work your way up to playing, or maybe you already do play at a jam session. But it's about the hang, right? It's about getting together. It's about hanging out with folks. You know, school, so this is a huge university, and there's thousands of people here. How is it possible to feel isolated? Right? But yet, maybe you still do. And like I said, sometimes I do also. Sometimes I feel isolated, I'm at home. And my son is jumping all over me. Right? So you have to kind of try to figure out what's the psychology of that? What can I do to more engage with the people around me? one of the ways to feel less isolated is to take on someone else's goal, is to help someone else do something that they need to do. So to take yourself out of it, right? Get involved doing something for someone else. You almost never feel isolated if you're focused on doing something for someone else. So, yeah. And also part of fitness is managing the relationships, managing your relationships. All right. So I had a student some years ago. He was a scholarship student, and I recruited a student and everything, came to school. But during orientation, he met a young lady who was also a freshman. And for whatever reason, starting from lesson 1, he wanted to do things, and he was kind of working on stuff, but he was having a hard time hitting a certain amount of time, in his practicing. And definitely it was obvious to me that his energy level wasn't particularly high when he was trying to practice. So I was like, okay, what's going on? And I would talk to him about it, and and he was pretty transparent. He was sharing with me, different things. And I want to say halfway through the year, something happened, because all of a sudden this student went from maybe about 2.5 hours of practicing to about 5 or 6 a day. And then just went like this. And I asked this student, I said, what's going on? Oh yeah, his girlfriend's going to another school. So now, I don't know the dynamics of their relationship, and it's not my business. But I do know I do know the difference in the way that my student was responding to what he was being taught after that person was no longer within close proximity. So, you have to be careful with relationships. It's a tough thing. Okay? And in my life, I've been in relationships that were taxing to the point where I could not practice. And I've had relationships where they have been very nurturing towards me practicing and facilitating. You want to side with the latter. Okay? Now, you can make your own mind up about that. But that story that I just told you about a student, that is a cliche. You know what I mean about a cliche? It means it's happened before. It's probably happening right now. It's going to happen again. And usually, if we're trying to push off, or you're trying to get me to get off this topic a little faster, if I'm talking slow about this, and it's really like, man, I wish you would start talking about something else, then maybe, okay. You have to, so much is talked about motivation, right? We're talking about motivation about everything. You turn on the TV, and somebody's, telling you take this pill, You don't even have to work. You can just sit on the couch and you'll lose the weight and like this and like this. And then, people, motivation is a $1 million, billion-dollar industry. The highest paid coaches in the NFL are great motivators. So motivation is the game, right? Now, here's the thing about motivation. You can generate your own motivation. Let me show you how you can do this. It's real simple. But it's simple, but it doesn't mean that it's easy. Simple means it's easy to understand, but actually doing it might be challenging, right? So number one is you have to set goals. If you set goals, it'll be easier for you to motivate yourself to get in the practice room to do what you need to do. Okay? Now, I tell my students to start with dream goals, then long-term, intermediate, short-term goals, and then short-term goals. And you write the dream goals last. You write those first, and then everything else, then long-term, then intermediate, and short-term. So short-term goals are the things that you're sort of focused on right now, today, this week, for the next couple of weeks. Those are like short-term goals. And all of your goals should be leading to the dream goal. So if my dream goal is I want to play in Pat Metheny's band. Say that's my dream goal. Okay, so then, now let me back up. Okay, now what in my long-term goals would I have to be doing to get around Pat Metheny so he knew who I was, so he's heard me play. So what do I need to do? Maybe it means I need to move to another location. Move to another location, tour with another band. Yeah, I mean, it could be a bunch of things. Maybe it means go to the school that he teaches at. I don't know. It could. I mean, there's all kinds of things it could be, right? And then intermediate goals would be like, okay, now I need to have a skill set. I need to have some kind of skill set that he would be interested in, right? So I need to finish my degree. I need to work on getting my doubling together, whatever, whatever those kind of skills are. Then short-term goals are like, stuff like, okay, I need to get my major scales and thirds and, and all keys at, 16th notes at quarter note equals 150. Or whatever, so you're working on those kind of goals, and so that's a short term. So you see all of those things are sort of leading towards that ultimate dream goal. So if you learn how to set goals, you can help to motivate yourself, because you're always reminding yourself of why it is that you're doing what you're doing, right? And you're achieving these goals along the way. Another way to help to motivate you to practice, in particular, is to enter competitions. Okay? Enter competitions. Okay, now look. I don't really like competitions. I'm just trying to be honest. Okay? And in my life, I've competed in some competitions, and in my head, I start focusing on stuff that probably doesn't really matter. Stuff like politics. And I'm like, well, these cats ain't gonna choose me because they already have their person picked. I start thinking that kind of stuff. But really, the power of competition, it's not as much as if you win or not. The issue, the thing is it gives you something to work towards, right? So entering a competition, you're getting your skill really honed in on what the objective is for that competition. And then also, you're going to meet some people you've never met before and interact maybe with the judges or whatever. So it gives you an opportunity. In the case of the competitions that we have here, there's money involved. That should be its own motivation. I'll take the money. I'll compete in the competition. Take the money. I guess I'm not allowed to do that though. But I mean, so you get the point. So you get two things. You get two things for those competitions. And get yourself moving. Sometimes the reason why you're having a hard time practicing or getting motivated to practice is because you haven't really gotten started yet. You know? So get yourself moving and give yourself a chance. Give yourself a chance to work the system. Set a system up. Set a schedule. Last week or a couple weeks ago, and this is something that I'm offering this to anybody that wants this. Okay? Now it's going to be brutal. But I'm offering what I'm about to say to anybody that wants it. If you're serious, I'm offering it. One of my students is having trouble getting motivated to practice. And part of it was because they didn't have their schedule set up in a way that was conducive to practicing. So we wrote down his entire schedule from Sunday through Saturday. The entire schedule. Work schedule, homework, all the classes, when he ate, woke up in the morning, everything. The whole thing. Right? Wrote the whole schedule out. And now, and I have a picture of it, so now I know what the student is doing all the time. Or supposed to be doing. That was not my objective. But now the student feels less out of control and can be more directed at those blocks of time that say practice. You know? Yeah. So like I'm serious. I will do that. I will help you do that. And I have some strategies that are effective. Like I said, it'll be brutal. But it'll help. But you have to get yourself moving. But once the schedule was all set up, then he was able to get himself moving. And so his practicing has been much more consistent, and better. Okay, so sometimes you have to get yourself moving. This last thing I'm going to talk to you about today is something that I've discussed with some of my students this semester. And it's a new idea that I've had over the last, I think it sort of started this summer. But it's a new idea, and it's the idea of treating yourself like a community. Okay? Now, what I mean by this, I'm not talking about multiple personality disorder. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about there is you in the past, you now, and you in the future. Okay? You in the past, you now, and you in the future. Okay? So, about 5 years ago, when I started my doctorate that I just completed last month, I called my dad and I said, hey, so I'm thinking about doing this doctorate. I don't really need it. I have tenure. They say that I don't really need to get promoted to full professor or to do other stuff. I don't really need that. But, I'm kind of thinking about it. I've kind of wanted to do it for a while, but they're not letting me do it at Ohio State because of a policy or whatever, and blah, blah, blah. So it's going to be, it's going to be a lot of driving, and it's going to be challenging. So what do you think? So my dad says to me, he says, he says, in 5 years from now, you'll either have a degree or you won't have the degree. And he said that if you don't have the degree, you won't even remember why it was that you didn't do it. You won't remember what the challenges were. You won't even be sympathetic to that. You have no knowledge of that. But you will feel regret. So I said, well, I guess I'm doing the degree then. So, but being fair to yourself, so I was being fair to myself, right? When you treat yourself like a community, you look for fairness, equity, right? You look at being respectful, of people's time, of your own time, in this case, right? So I was being fair to myself in that I put off my own comfort, delayed self-gratification, or delayed gratification, right? So I put off my own feelings, my own situation, my comfort, I put that off for a time to benefit me now. Right? And the thing is that I have no control. Right now, I have no control of what I did in the past. I can't change any of that. But me in the past had all of the control, and I could have either been fair to me now and treated me the way that I would have wanted to be treated. I know this is a little strange. Or I could have just said, you know what? I'm doing what I want to do. I don't care about that guy that doesn't even exist, right? So everyone, and me included, our lives are a combination of things that we traded ourselves fairly, and therefore we're in a good situation now, and where we did not treat ourselves fairly, and we're suffering the consequences now. Okay? And the fact that we cannot control now what we did in the past, that should serve as some kind of motivation for the kinds of decisions you make now for you in the future. Are you going to treat yourself fairly? Or not? That's all I got for you.